Hello, 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 if anyone's here.
What were you reading last time? Oh, I'm pretty sure I heard you say. To see what your story type thing was.
Hey Flexus, how are you doing? Have you been watching Planex's 42 minutes Samarog? This is incredible. Or at least I have to say, it is incredible. Actually, let me shit a little bit more in other channels or chats, shit like that. Yes, that's not what I wanted to copy paste. Bands, what am I doing? It's stupid. I know, but it's fun. The main thing is that it's fun, isn't it? It's just gonna be chill books, short stories. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, I wanted to do it in Jim's thing. No, it's not. Okay, for you it might not be, but for some people it's fun. At least it's challenging somewhat. I mean, it was not the most engaging content to watch. Water race? No. No, I do not. Do you mind explaining to me what the water ray guys are? Oh, Sky. Yeah, oh, yeah, those guys. Yes, yeah, I remember. I'm sorry. Are they not reacting to you as you expected them to react to you, Flexus? Hello, Yukon. Yes, you got your stabby mode back. Oh no. Flexus, that is the wrong idea. That was the wrong idea. Also, after the stream, I will be probably working on the next one, which is gonna be Sleeper for Flexus or something like that. Snooze, something like that. Well, oh yeah. That's where you're wrong. Everything can go wrong with mods. Yeah, Sleeper, snooze, chill. So yeah, what was wrong with that one, Flexus? What was wrong with that one? Also, I have enabled a new command, which is books. I don't know if it sticks it up. Yes, now it sticks it up at the top. So there's a new poll available. Well, it's still the same poll, but it's just to see. I was looking into the Stormlight archives and wanted to get the hardcover books, but £600, £230 for the first book, which is fucking crazy. Hello, Melk. How are you doing? How are you doing, my friend? Oh god, yeah, that's oof, Lexus. Yeah, that is big oof. Yes, book club indeed. Nice, good to hear. So we are still. Thank you for the resub, Arky. I appreciate it. How are you doing, my friend? Yeah, yes, I did not expect that. Thank you. I am doing fine. There was a placeholder pink texture, amazing. I went for a short run this morning. It was nice. We played some D&D. It was mostly downtime activities that we played for like 2 hours. Hello, Auntie. How are you doing? How are you doing, my friend? And then I was doing some housework and stuff. That's why I didn't join Planix on his meme runs. But yeah. And here we are now. And later there's gonna be some shrekking going on and what is it? Zebernet's channel? Anyway, okay. Take the Doge for a walk. Yeah, I'm gonna try those later, probably in a later Shrekkening. The Shrekkening. Yes, we are gonna be watching Shrek 3. Indeed. Also, Milk, the new light arrived, and it's fucking great. I don't know how good it is right now because light's coming from there as well, but it's a big improvement. But then again, I am getting a bit too many things with USB ports, so I will have to get a USB hub at one point. But also, I don't have a tea today because it's so fucking warm. I'm only wearing this because I'm wearing a crop top and the window is open and the window is just like coming in. Yeah. Okay, shall we start? The White Road. I wish that you would visit me one day in my house. There are such sights I would show you. My intended lower my intended lowers her eyes and yes, she shivers. Her father and his friends all hoot and cheer. That's never a story, Mr. Fox, chides a pale woman. In the corner of the room, her hair corn fair, her eyes the grey of cloud, meat on her bones, she curves and smiles crooked and amused. Madame, I am no storyteller, and I bow and ask, perhaps you have a story for us. I raise an eyebrow. Her smile remains. She nods, then stands, her lips move. A girl from the town, a plain girl, was betrayed by her lover, a scholar. So when her blood stopped flowing and her belly swelled beyond disguising, she went to him and wept hot tears. He stroked her hair, swore that they would marry, that they would run in the night together to his aunt. She believed him, even though she had seen the glances in the hall he gave to his master's daughter, who was fair and rich. She believed him, or she believed that she believed. There was something sly about his smile, his eyes so black and sharp, his rufous hair, something that sent her early to their trysting place beneath the oak beside the thorn bush, something that made her climb the tree and wait, climb a tree and in her condition. Her love arrived at dusk, skulking by owl light, carrying a bag, from which he took a mattock, shovel, knife. He worked with a will beside the thorn bush. Beneath the oaken tree, he whistled gently, and he sang, as he dug her grave, that old song. Shall I sing it for you now, good folk? She pauses, and as one we clap, and we hollow, or almost as one. My intended, her hair so dark, her cheeks so pink, her lips so red, seems distracted. The fair girl, who is she? A guest of the inn, I hazard, sings. Fox went out on a shiny night, and he begged for the moon to give him light, for he'd many miles to go that night. Before he'd reach his then oh. Yes, I'm not gonna sing this. He'd many miles to go that night before he would reach his then oh. Her voice is sweet and fine, but the voice of my intended is finer. And when her grave was dug, a small hole it was, for she was a little thing. Even big with child, she was a little thing. He walked below her, back and the forth, rehearsing her hearsing, thus, good evening, my Pixnay, my love, but you look a treat in the moon's light, mother of my child to be. Come, let me hold you. And he'd embrace the midnight air with one hand, and with the other, holding his short but wicked knife, he'd stab and stab the dark. She trembled in her oak above him, breathed so softly, but still she shook. And once he looked up and said, Owls, I'll wager, and another time, Fie, is that a cat up there? Here, puss. But she was still, bethought herself a branch, a leaf, a twig. At dawn he took his mattock, spade, and knife, and left all grumbling and gudgeoned of his prey. They found her later wandering, her wit had left her. There were oak leaves in her hair, and she sang. The bow did bend, the bow did break, I saw the hole the fox did make. We swore to love, we swore to marry, I saw the blade the fox did carry. They say that her babe, when it was born, had a fox's paw on her, and not a hand. Fear is the sculptress, midwives claim. The scholar fled. And she sits down to general applause. The smile twitches, hides about her lips. I know it's there, it waits in her grey eyes. She stares at me, amused. I read that in the Orient foxes follow priests and scholars in disguise as women. Houses, mountains, gods, processions, always discovered by their tails. So I begin. But my intended's father intercedes. Speaking of tails, my dear, you said you had a tail. My intended flushes. There are no rose petals save for her cheeks. She nods and says, My story, father? My story is the story of a dream I dreamed. Her voice is so quiet and soft. We hush ourselves to hear outside the inn just the night sounds, an owl hoots. But, as the old folks say, I live too near the woods to be frightened by an owl. She looks at me. You, sir, in my dream you wrote to me and called. Come to my house, my sweet, away down the white road. There are such sights I would show you. I asked how I would find your house down the white chalk road, for it's a long road and a dark one under trees that make the light all green and gold when the sun is high, but shade the road at other times. At night it's pitch black. There is no moonlight on the white road. And you said, Mr. Fox, and this is most curious, but dreams are treacherous and curious and dark, that you would cut the throat of a sow pig, and you would walk her home behind your fine black stallion. You smiled, Mr. Fox, with your red lips and your green eyes, eyes that could snare a maiden's soul, and your yellow teeth, which could eat her heart. God forbid, I smiled. All eyes were on me, then, not her, though hers was the story. Eyes, such eyes. So, in my dream, it became my fancy to visit your great house, as you had so often entreated me to do, to walk its glades and paths, to see the pools, the statues you had brought from Greece, the yews, the poplar walk, the grotto, and the bower. And as this was but a dream, I did not wish to take a chaperone. Some withered, juiceless prune, who would not appreciate your house, Mr. Fox, who would not appreciate your pale skin, nor your green eyes, nor your engaging ways. So I rode the white chalk road, following the red blood path on Betsy, my filly. The trees above were green, a dozen miles straight, and then the blood led me off across meadows, over ditches, down a gravel path. But now I needed sharp eyes to catch the blood, a drip, a drop. The pig must have been dead as anything. And I reined my filly in front of a house. And such a house! A Palladian delight, immense, a landscape of its own, windows, columns, a white stone monument to verticality, expansive. There was a sculpture in the garden, before the house, a Spartan child, stolen fox, half concealed in its robe, the fox biting the child's stomach, gnawing the vitals away, the stoic child bravely saying nothing. What could it say, cold marble that it was? There was pain in its eyes, and it stood upon a plinth on which were carved 8 words. I walked around it, and I read, be bold, but not too bold. I tethered little Betsy in the stables, between a dozen night black stallions, each with blood and madness in his eyes. I saw no one. I walked to the front of the house and up the great steps. The huge doors were locked fast. No servants came to greet me when I knocked. In my dream, for do not forget, Mr. Fox, that this was my dream. You look so pale. The house fascinated me, the kind of curiosity. You know this, Mr. Fox. I can see it in your eyes, that kills cats. I found a door, a small door, off the latch, and pushed my way inside. Walked corridors lined with oaks, with shelves, with busts, with trinkets. I walked my feet silent on the scarlet carpet until I reached the great hall. It was there again, in red stones that glittered, set into the white marble of the floor. It said, be bold, but not too bold, or else your life's blood shall run cold. There were stairs, wide, carpeted in scarlet, of the great hall, and I walked up them silently, oak doors, and now I was in the dining room, or so I am convinced, for the remnants of a grisly supper were abandoned, cold and fly-buzzed. Here was a half-chewed hand, there crisped and picked a woman's face who must in life, I fear, have looked like me. Heavens defend us all from such dark dreams, her father cried. Can such things be? It is not so, I assured him. The fair woman's smile glittered behind her grey eyes. People need assurances. Beyond this supper room was a room, a huge room. This inn would fit in that room. Piled promiscuously with rings and bracelets, necklaces, pearl drops, ball gowns, fur wraps, lace petticoats, silks and satins, ladies' boots and muffs and bonnets, a treasure cave and dressing room, diamonds and rubies underneath my feet. Beyond that room, I knew myself in hell. In my dream, I saw many heads, the heads of young women. I saw a wall on which dismembered limbs were nailed, a heap of breasts, the piles of guts, of livers, lights, the eyes, the... No, I cannot say. And all around the flies were buzzing, one low droning buzz. Beelzebub. They buzzed. I could not breathe. I ran from there and sobbed against the wall. A fox's lair indeed, says the fair woman. It was not so, I mutter. They are untidy creatures, so to litter about their dens the bones and skins and feathers of their prey. The French call him Reynard, the Scottish Todd. One cannot help one's name, said my intended's father. He is almost panting now. They all are. In the firelight, the fire's heat, lapping their ale. The wall of the inn was hung with sporting prints. She continues. From the outside, I heard a crash and a commotion. I ran back the way I had come, along the red carpet, down the wide staircase. Too late! The main door was opening. I threw myself down the stairs, rolling, tumbling, fetched up hopelessly beneath a table, where I waited, shivered, prayed. She points at me. Yes, you, sir. You came in, crashed open the door, staggered in. You, sir. Dragging a young woman, by her red hair and by her throat. Her hair was long and unconfined. She screamed and strove to free herself. You laughed, deep in your throat, whereon all a sweet and grinned from ear to ear. She glares at me, the colours in her cheeks. You pulled a short old broadsword, Mr. Fox, and as she screamed, you slit her throat again from ear to ear. I listened to her bubbling, sighing, shriek, and closed my eyes and prayed until she stopped. And after much, much, much too long, she stopped. And I looked out. You smiled, held up your sword, your hands gore blood. In your dream, I tell her. In my dream. She lay there, on the marble as you sliced, you hacked, you wrenched, you panted, and you stabbed. You took her head from her shoulders, thrust your tongue between her red, wet lips. You cut off her hands, her pale white hands. You sliced open her bodice, you removed each breast. Then you began to sob and howl. Of a sudden, clutching her head, which you carried by the hair, the flame-red hair, you ran up the stairs. As soon as you were out of sight, I fled through the open door. I rode my Betsy home, down the white road. All eyes upon me now. I put down my ale on the old wood of the table. It is not so. I told her. I told all of them. It was not so, and God forbid it should be so. It was an evil dream. I wish such dreams on no one. Before I fled the charnel house, before I rode poor Betsy into a leather, before we fled down the white road, the blood still red, and was it a pig whose throat you slit, Mr. Fox? Before I came to my father's inn, before I fell before them speechless, my father, brothers, friends, all the honest farmers, fox-hunting men, they are stamping their boots, their black boots. Before that, Mr. Fox, I seized from the bloody floor, her hand, Mr. Fox, the hand of the woman you hacked apart before my eyes. It is not so. It was no dream, you creature, you Bluebeard. It was not so. You Gilly-de-Rais, you monster, and God forbid it should be so. She smiles now, lacking mirth or warmth. The brown hair curls around her face. Rose is twining about the bower. 2 spots of red are burning on her cheeks. Behold, Mr. Fox, her hand, her poor pale hand. She pulls it from her breast, gently freckled. I had dreamed of those breasts. Tosses it down upon the table. It lays in front of me. Her father, brothers, friends, they stare at me hungrily, and I pick up the small thing. The hair was red indeed, and rank. The pads and claws were rough. One end was bloody, but the blood had dried. This is no hand, I tell them, but the first fist knocks the wind from out of me. An oaken cudgel hits my shoulder as I stagger. The first black boot kicks me down onto the floor, and then a rain of blows beats down on me. I curl and meow and pray and grip the paw so tightly. Perhaps I weep. I see her then, the pale, fair girl. The smile has reached her lips, her skirt so long as she slips, grey-eyed, amused beyond all bearings, from the room. She'd many a mile to go that night, and as she leaves, from my vantage place upon the floor, I see the brush, the tail between her legs. I would have called, but I could speak no more. Tonight she will be running forfeited, sure-footed, down the white road. What if the hunters come? What if they come? Be bold, I whisper once before I die, but not too bold, and then my tale is done. What a wonderful, charming little tale, isn't it? Do not mess with foxes. Yeah, on to the next one. The next one is titled Queen of Knives. Little quote at the beginning. The reappearance of the lady is a matter of individual taste. Willard Golston, Tricks and Delusions. When I was a boy, from time to time, I stayed with my grandparents. Old people, I knew they were old. Chocolates in their house remained uneaten until I came to stay. This, then, was aging. My grandfather always made breakfast at sunup. A pot of tea for her and him and me, some toast and marmalade, the silver shred and the gold. Lunch and dinner, those were my grandmother's to make. The kitchen was again her domain. All the pans and spoons, the mincer, all the whisks and knives, her loyal subjects. She would prepare the food with them, singing her little songs. These, Daisy, give me your answer to do. Or sometimes, you made me love you. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. She had no voice, not one to speak of. Business was very slow. My grandfather spent his days at the top of the house, in his tiny dark room, where I was not permitted to go, bringing out paper faces from the darkness, the cheerless smiles of other people's holidays. My grandmother would take me for grey walks along the promenade. Mostly I would explore the small wet grassy space behind the house, the blackberry brambles, and the garden shed. It was a hard week for my grandparents, forced to entertain a wide-eyed boy child. So one night they took me to the King's Theatre, the King's Variety. The lights went down, red curtains rose. A popular comedian of the day came on, stammered out his name, his catchphrase, pulled out a sheet of glass and stood half behind it, raising the arm and leg that we could see reflected. He seemed to fly. It was his trademark, so we all laughed and cheered. He told a joke or two, quite badly. His helplessness, his awkwardness, these were what we had come to see. Bemused and balding and bespectacled, he reminded me a little of my grandfather. And then the comedian was done. Some ladies danced all legs across the stage. A singer sang a song I didn't know. The audience were old people like my grandparents, tired and retired, all of them laughing and applauding. In the interval, my grandfather queued for a chalk ice and a couple of tubs. We ate our ices as the lights went down. The safety curtain rose, and then the real curtain. The ladies danced across the stage again, and then the thunder rolled, the smoke went puff, A conjurer appeared and bowed. We clapped. The lady walked on, smiling from the wings, glittered, shimmered, smiled. We looked at her, and in that moment flowers grew and silks and pennants tumbled from his fingertips. The flags of all nations, said my grandfather, nudging me. They were up his sleeve. Since he was a young man, I could not imagine him as a child. My grandfather had been, by his own admission, one of the people who knew how things worked. He had built his own television, my grandmother told me, when they were first married. It was enormous, though. The screen was small. This was in the days before television programs. They watched it, though. Unsure whether it was people or ghosts they were seeing. He had a patent, too, for something be invented, but it was never manufactured. Stood for the local council, but he came in third. He could repair a shaver or wireless, develop your film, or build a house for dolls. The doll's house was my mother's. We still had it in my house, shabby and old. It sat out in the grass, all rained on and forgotten. The glitter lady wheeled on a box. The box was tall, grown-up person-sized, and black. She opened up the front. They turned it round and banged upon the back. The lady stepped inside, still smiling. The magician closed the door on her. When it was opened, she was gone. He bowed. Mirrors, explained my grandfather. She's really still inside. At a gesture, the box collapsed to matchwood. A trapdoor, assured my grandfather. Grandma hissed him silent. The magician smiled. His teeth were small and crowded. He walked slowly out into the audience. He pointed to my grandmother. He bowed, a Middle European bow, and invited her to join him on the stage. The other people clapped and cheered. My grandmother demurred. I was so close to the magician that I could smell his aftershave and whispered, "Me, oh me!" But still, he reached up his long fingers for my grandmother. "Pearl, go on up," said my grandfather. "Go with the man." My grandmother must have been, 60 then? She had just stopped smoking, was trying to lose some weight. She was proudest of her teeth, which, though tobacco-stained, were all of her own. My grandfather had lost his as a youth riding his bicycle. He had the bright idea to hold on to a bus to pick up speed. The buses turned, and Grandpa kissed the road. She chewed hard licorice, watching TV at night, or sucked hard caramels, perhaps to make him wrong. She stood up, then, a little slowly, put down the paper tub half full of ice cream, the little wooden spoon, and went down the aisle, and up the steps, and on the stage. The conjurer applauded her once more. A good sport. That was what she was, a sport. Another glittering woman came from the wings, bringing another box. This one was red. "That's her," nodded my grandfather. "The one who vanished up before. You see? That's her." Perhaps it was. All I could see was a woman who sparkled, standing next to my grandmother, who fiddled with her pearls and looked embarrassed. The lady smiled and faced us. Then she froze, a statue, or a window mannequin. The magician pulled the box, with ease, down to the front of stage, where my grandmother waited. A moment or so of chit-chat. Where was she from? Her name? That kind of thing. They'd never met before. She shook her head. The magician opened the door. My grandmother stepped in. "Perhaps it's not the same one," admitted my grandfather, on reflection. "I think she had darker hair, the other girl." I don't know. I was proud of my grandmother, but also embarrassed, hoping she would do nothing to make me squirm, that she wouldn't sing one of her songs. She walked into the box. They shut the door. He opened a compartment at the top, a little door. We saw my grandmother's face. "Pearl? Are you all right, Pearl?" My grandmother smiled and nodded. The magician closed the door. The lady gave him a long, thin case, so he opened it, took out a sword, and rammed it through the box. And then another, and my grandfather chuckled and explained. The blade slides in the hilt, and then a fake slides out the other side. Then he produced a sheet of metal, which he slid into the box, half the way up. It cut the thing in half. The two of them, the woman and the man, lifted the top half of the box up and off and put it on the stage, with half my grandma in. The top half. He opened up the little door again, For a moment, my grandmother's face beamed at us trustingly. When he closed the door before, she went down a trapdoor. And now she's standing halfway up, my grandfather confided. She will tell us how it's done when it's all over. I wanted him to stop talking. I needed the magic. 2 knives now, through the half a box at neck height. Are you there, Pearl? Asked the magician. Let us know. Do you know any songs? My grandmother sang Daisy Daisy. He picked up the part of the box with the little door in it, the head part, and he walked about and she sang Daisy Daisy, first at one side of the stage, then at the other. That's him, said my grandfather. And he's throwing his voice. It sounds like Grandma, I said. Of course it does, he said. Of course it does. He is good, he said. He is good. He is very good. The conjurer opened up the box again, now head box sized. My grandmother had finished Daisy Daisy and was on a song which went, my, here we go. The driver's drunk and the horse won't go. Now we're going back, now we're going back, back to London town. She had been born in London, told me ominous tales from time to time of her childhood, of the children who ran into her father's shop shouting shonky shonky sheeny, running away. She would not let me wear a black shirt because, she said, she remembered the marches through the East End, mostly black shirts. Her sister got an eye blackened. The conjurer took a kitchen knife, pushed it slowly through the red hat box, and then the singing stopped. He put the boxes back together, pulled out the knives and swords one by one by one. He opened the compartment in the top. My grandmother smiled, embarrassed at us, displaying her own old teeth. He closed the compartment, hiding her from view, pulled out the last knife, opened the main door again, and she was gone. A gesture, and the red box vanished too. It's up his sleeve, my grandfather explained, but seemed unsure. The conjurer made 2 doves fly from a burning plate, a puff of smoke, and he was gone as well. She will be under the stage now, or backstage, said my grandfather. Having a cup of tea, she will come back to us with flowers or with chocolates. I hoped for chocolates. The dancing girls again, the comedian for the last time, and all of them came on together at the end. The grand finale, said my grandfather. Look sharp, perhaps she will be back on now. But no, they sang, when you are riding along, on the crest of the wave and the sun in the sky. The curtain went down, and we shuffled out into the lobby. We loitered for a while. Then we went down to the stage door and waited for my grandmother to come out. The conjurer came out in street clothes. The glitter woman looked so different in a mac. My grandfather went to speak to him. He shrugged, told us he spoke no English, and produced a half a crown from behind my ear and vanished off into the dark and rain. I never saw my grandmother again. We went back to their house and carried on. My grandfather now had to cook for us. And so for breakfast, dinner, lunch, and tea we had golden toast and silver marmalade and cups of tea. Till I went home. He got so old after that night, as if the years took him all in a rush. Daisy, Daisy, he would sing. Give me your answer, do. If you were the only girl in the world, and I were the only boy. My old man said follow the van. My grandfather had the voice in the family. They said he could have been a cantor, but there were snapshots to develop, radios and razors to repair. His brothers were a singing duo, the Nightingales. Had been on television in the early days. He bore it well, although quite late one night I woke, remembering the licorice sticks in the pantry. I walked downstairs. My grandfather stood there in his bare feet. And in the kitchen, all alone, I saw him stab a knife into a box. You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. That was the end of this one. Hey Danny boy, how are you doing? We are 2 short stories into the book club today, so yeah. Welcome, welcome. club. Do you guys think the old guy killed his wife in some way, shape, or form? It does sound like that. It is all magic, after all, isn't it? Oh yeah, by the way, I have one of these as a bookmark. Yeah, yeah. Hi, Danny boy. How is your day? How's your day going? How was your weekend? How was everyone's weekend? I want to hear about that. Yes, yes, yes. Can always read chat. I mean, I can always reread chat when we finish a story, and if not in the meantime. Yeah, I feel that. Going back to work. Yeah. I mean, a nice Binding of Hippos. I still want to like make that at one point. But I'm working on so many things at the same time. I'm working on the Juggernaut. I'm working on the Shining Blade. I'm working on Age of Divinity. So yes, I'm working on my legendary armor. Yeah. So that hasn't been going at all. Yeah, that's nice. I really like that focus. It's a really nice skin. It's very demony. I feel like it fits your character really well, Arky. Your Necro. Yeah. Okay, next short story is The Facts in the Case of the Departure of Miss Finch. To begin at the end, I arranged a thin slice of pickled ginger, pink and translucent, on top of the pale yellowtail flesh and dipped the whole arrangement, ginger, fish, and vinegar rice, into the soy sauce. Flesh side down, then I devoured it in a couple of bites. I think we ought to go to the police, I said. And tell them what exactly? Asked Jane. Well, we could file a missing persons report or something. I don't know. And where did you last see the young lady? I asked Jonathan, in his most policeman-like tones. Ah, I see. Did you know that wasting police time is normally considered an offense, sir? But the whole circus. These are transient people, sir, of legal age. They come and go. If you have their names, I suppose I can take a report. And gloomily, I devoured a salmon skin roll. Well done, I said. Why don't we go to the papers? Brilliant idea, said Jonathan, in the sort of tone of voice which indicates that the person talking doesn't think it's a brilliant idea at all. Jonathan's right, said Jane. They won't listen to us. Why wouldn't they believe us? We're reliable, honest citizens, all that. You're a fantasy writer, she said. You make up stuff like this for a living. No one's gonna believe you. But you two saw it as well. You'd back me up. Jonathan's got a new series on cult horror movies coming out in the autumn. They will say he's just trying to get cheap publicity for the show. And I've got another book coming out. Same thing. So, you're saying that we can't tell anyone? I sipped my green tea. No, Jane said, reasonably. We can tell anyone we want. It's making them believe us that's problematic. Or, if you ask me, impossible. The pickled ginger was sharp on my tongue. You may be right, I said. And Miss Finch is probably much happier wherever she is right now than she would have been here. But her name isn't Miss Finch, said Jane. It's... And she said our former companion's real name. I know, but it's what I thought when I first saw her, I explained. Like in one of those movies, you know when they take off their glasses and put down their hair? Why, Miss Finch, you're beautiful. She certainly was that, said Jonathan. In the end, anyway. And he shivered at the memory. There. So now you know. That's how it all ended, and how the three of us left it several years ago. All that remains is the beginning and the details. For the record, I don't expect you to believe any of this. Not really. I'm a liar by trade, after all, albeit I like to think an honest liar. If I belonged to a gentleman's club, I would recount it over a glass or two of port late in the evening as fire burned low. But I am a member of no such club, and I will write it better than ever I would tell it. So here you will learn of Miss Finch, whose name, as you already know, was not Finch or anything like it, since I'm changing names here to disguise the guilty, and how it came about that she was unable to join us for sushi. Believe it or not, just as you wish. I am not even certain that I can believe it anymore. It all seems such a long way away. I could find a dozen of I could find a dozen beginnings. Perhaps it might be best to begin in a hotel room in London a few years ago. It was 11 a.m. The phone began to ring, which surprised me. I hurried over to answer it. Hello? It was too early in the morning for anyone in America to be phoning me, and there was no one in England who was meant to know that I was even in the country. Hi, said a familiar voice, adopting an American accent of monumentally unconvincing proportions. This is Hiram P. Muzzledexter of Colossal Pictures. We are working on a film that's a remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but instead of Nazis, it has women with enormous knockers in it. We've heard that you were astonishingly well supplied in the trouser department and might be willing to take on the part of our male lead, Minnesota Jones. Jonathan, I said, how on earth did you find me here? He knew it was me, he said, aggrieved, his voice losing all trace of the improbable accent and returning to his native London. Well, it sounded like you, I pointed out. Anyway, you didn't answer my question. No one's meant to know I was here. I have my ways, he said, not very mysteriously. Listen, if Jane and I were to offer to feed you sushi, something I recall you eating in quantities, that put me in mind of feeding time at London Zoo's Walrus House, and if we offered to take you the theatre before we fed you, what would you say? Not sure. I would say yes, I suppose. Or what's the catch? I might say that. Not exactly a catch, said Jonathan. I wouldn't exactly call it a catch. Not a real catch. Not really. You are lying, aren't you? Somebody said something near the phone, and then Jonathan said, Hang on, Jane wants a word. Jane is Jonathan's wife. How are you? She said. Fine, thanks. Look, she said, you would be doing us a tremendous favor. Not that we wouldn't love to see you, because we would, but you see, there's someone. She's your friend, said Jonathan in the background. She's not my friend. I hardly know her, she said, away from the phone, and then to me, look, there's someone we're sort of lumbered with. She's not in the country for very long, and I wound up agreeing to entertain her and look after her tomorrow night. She's pretty frightful, actually. And Jonathan heard that you were in town from someone at your film company, and we thought you might be perfect to make it all less awful, so please say yes. So I said yes. In retrospect, I think the whole thing might have been the fault of the late Ian Fleming, creator of James Bond. I had read an article the previous month in which Ian Fleming had advised any would-be writer who had a book to get done that wasn't getting written to go to a hotel to write it. I had not a novel, but a film script that wasn't getting written, so I bought a plane ticket to London, promised the film company that they would have a finished script in 3 weeks' time, and took a room in an eccentric hotel in Little Venice. I told no one in England that I was there. Had people known, my days and nights would have been spent seeing them, not staring at a computer screen and sometimes writing. Truth to tell, I was bored half out of my mind and ready to welcome any interruptions. Early the next evening, I arrived at Jonathan and Jane's house, which was more or less in Hampstead. There was a small green sports car parked outside. Up the stairs, and I knocked at the door. Jonathan answered it. He wore an impressive suit. His light brown hair was longer than I remembered it from the last time I had seen him, in life or on television. Hello, said Jonathan. The show we were going to take you to has been cancelled, but we can go to something else, if that's okay with you. I was about to point out that I didn't know what we were originally going to see, so a change of plan would make no difference to me. But Jonathan was already leading me into the living room, establishing that I wanted fizzy water to drink, assuring me that we would still be eating sushi and that Jane would be coming downstairs as soon as she had finished putting the children to bed. They had just redecorated the living room in a style Jonathan describes as Moorish brothel, brothel. It didn't set out to be a Moorish brothel, he explained, or any kind of brothel, really. It was just where we ended up. The brothel look. Has he told you all about Miss Finch? Asked Jane. Her hair had been red the last time I had seen her. Now it was dark brown, and she curved like a Raymond Chandler simile. Who? We were talking about Ditko's inking style, apologized Jonathan, and the Neil Adams issues of Jerry Lewis. But she will be here any moment, and he has to know about her before she gets here. Jane is, by profession, a journalist, but had become a best-selling author almost by accident. She had written a companion volume to accompany a television series about two paranormal investigators, which had risen to the top of the bestseller list and stayed there. Jonathan had originally become famous hosting an evening talk show and had since parlayed his gonzo charm into a variety of fields. He's the same person whether the camera is on or off, which is not always true of television folk. It's a kind of family obligation, Jane explained. Well, not exactly family. She's Jane's friend, said her husband cheerfully. She is not my friend, but I couldn't exactly say no to them, could I? And she's only in the country for a couple of days. And who Jane could not say no to, and what the obligation was, I never was to learn. For at the moment the doorbell rang, and I found myself being introduced to Miss Finch, which, as I have mentioned, was not her name. She wore a black leather cap and a black leather coat, and black hair pulled tightly back into a small bun, done up with a pottery tie. She wore makeup so expertly applied to give an impression of severity that a professional dominatrix might have envied her. Her lips were tight together, and she glared at the world through a pair of definite black-rimmed spectacles. They punctuated her face much too definitely to ever be mere glasses. So, she said, as if she were pronouncing that sentence, we are going to the theatre, then? Well, yes and no, said Jonathan. I mean, yes, we are still going out, but we are not going to be able to see the Romans in Britain. Good, said Miss Finch. In poor taste, anyways. Why anyone would have thought that nonsense would make a musical, I do not know. So we are going to a circus, said Jane, reassuringly, and then we are going to eat sushi. Miss Finch's lips tightened. I do not approve of circuses, she said. There aren't any animals in this circus, said Jane. Good, said Miss Finch, and she sniffed. I was beginning to understand why Jane and Jonathan had wanted me along. The rain was pattering down as we left the house, and the street was dark. We squeezed ourselves into the sports car and headed out into London. Miss Finch and I were in the tiny back seat of the car, pressed uncomfortably close together. Jane told Miss Finch that I was a writer, and told me that Miss Finch was a biologist. Biogeologist, actually, Miss Finch corrected her. Were you serious about eating sushi, Jonathan? Yes? Why? Don't you like sushi? Oh, I will eat my food cooked, she said, and began to list for us all the various flukes, worms, and parasites that lurk in the flesh of fish, and which are only killed by cooking. She told us of their life cycles while the rain pelted down, slicking nighttime London into garish neon colors. Jane shot me a sympathetic glance from the passenger seat, then she and Jonathan went back to scrutinizing a handwritten set of directions to wherever we were going. We crossed the Thames at London Bridge, while Miss Finch lectured us about blindness, madness, and liver failure, and she was just deliberating on the symptoms of elephantiasis as proudly as if she had invented them herself when we pulled up in a small back street in the neighborhood of Southwark Cathedral. So, where's the circus? I asked. Somewhere around here, said Jonathan. They contacted us about being on the Christmas special. I tried to pay for tonight's show, but they insisted on comping us in. I'm sure it will be fun, said Jane hopefully. Miss Finch sniffed. A fat, bald man dressed as a monk ran down the pavement towards us. There you are, he said. I've been keeping an eye out for you. You're late. I will be starting in a moment. He turned around and scampered back the way he had come, and we followed him. The rain splashed on his bald head and ran down his face, turning his Vester Adams makeup into streaks of white and brown. He pushed open a door in the side of the wall. In here! We went in. There were about 50 people in there already, dripping and steaming, while a tall woman in a bad vampire makeup holding a small torch walked around checking tickets, tearing off stubs, selling tickets to anyone who didn't have one. A small, stocky woman immediately in front of us shook the rain from her umbrella and glowered about her fiercely. This would be this better be good, she told the young man with her son, I suppose. She paid for tickets for both of them. The vampire woman reached us, recognized Jonathan, and said, "Is this your party? 4 people, yes? You are on the guest list," which provoked a suspicious stare in our direction from the stocky woman. A recording of a clock ticking began to play. A clock struck 12. It was barely 8 by my watch, and the wooden double doors at the far end of the room creaked open. "Enter, of your own free will," boomed the voice, and it laughed manically. We walked through the door into the darkness. It smelled of wet bricks and of decay. I knew then where we were. There are networks of old cellars that run beneath some of the underground train tracks, vast, empty, linked rooms of various sizes and shapes. Some of them are used for storage by wine merchants and used car sellers. Some are squatted in until the lack of light and facilities drives the squatters back into the daylight. Most of them stand empty, waiting for the inevitable arrival of the wrecking ball and the open air, and the time when all their secrets and mysteries will be no more. A train rattled above us. We shuffled forward, led by Uncle Fester and the vampire woman, into a sort of holding pen where we stood and waited. "I hope we are going to be able to sit down after this," said Miss Finch. When we were all settled, the flashlight went out and the spotlights went on. The people came out. Some of them rode motorbikes and dune buggies. They ran and they laughed, and they swung and they cackled. Whoever had dressed them had been reading too many comics, I thought, or watched Mad Max too many times. There were punks and nuns and vampires and monsters and strippers and the living dead. They danced and capered around us while the ringmaster, identifiable by his top hat, sang Alice Cooper's song "Welcome to My Nightmare" and sang it very badly. "I know Alice Cooper," I muttered to myself, misquoting something half remembered, "and you, sir, are no Alice Cooper." "That's pretty enough," agreed Jonathan. Jane shushed us. As the last notes faded away, the ringmaster was left alone in the spotlight. He walked around our enclosure while he talked. "Welcome, welcome, one and all, to the Theatre of Night's Dreaming," he said. "And of yours," whispered Jonathan. "I think it's Rocky Horror Showline," I whispered back. "Tonight you will all be witnesses to monsters undreamed of, freaks and creatures of the night, to display of ability to make you shriek with fear and laugh with joy. We shall travel," he told us, "from room to room, and in each of these subterranean caverns another nightmare, another delight, another display of wonder awaits you. Please, for your own safety, I must reiterate this. Do not leave the spectating area marked out for you in each room, on pain of doom, bodily injury, and the loss of your immortal soul. Also, I must stress that the use of flash photography or of any recording devices is utterly forbidden." And with that, several young women holding pencil flashlights led us into the next room. No seats then," said Mrs. Finch, unimpressed. The first room. In the first room, the smiling blonde woman wearing a spangled bikini with needle tracks down her arms was chained by a hunchback and Uncle Fester to a large wheel. The wheel spun slowly around, and the fat man in a red cardinal's costume threw knives at the woman, outlining her body. Then the hunchback blindfolded the cardinal, who threw the last 3 knives straight and true to outline the woman's head. He removed his blindfold. The woman was untied and lifted down from the wheel. They took a bow. We clapped. Then the cardinal took a trick knife from his belt and pretended to cut the woman's throat with it. Blood spilled down from the knife blade. A few members of the audience gasped, and one excitable girl gave a small scream, while her friends giggled. The cardinal and the spangled woman took their final bow. The lights went down. We followed the flashlights down a brick-lined corridor. second room. The smell of damp was worse here. It smelled like a cellar, musty and forgotten. I could hear somewhere the drip of rain. The ringmaster introduced the creature. Stitched together in the laboratories of the night, the creature is capable of astonishing feats of strength. The Frankenstein's monster makeup was less than convincing, but the creature lifted a stone block with fat Uncle Fester sitting on it, and held back the dune buggy, driven by the vampire woman at full throttle. For his piece de resistance, he blew up a hot water bottle, then popped it. "We're all on the sushi," I muttered to Jonathan. Miss Finch pointed out, quietly, that in addition to the danger of parasites, it was also the case that bluefin tuna, swordfish, and Chilean sea bass were all being overfished and could soon be rendered extinct, since they were not reproducing fast enough to catch up. The third room. The third room went up for a long way into the darkness. The original ceiling had been removed at some point in the past, and the new ceiling was the roof of the empty warehouse far above us. The room buzzed at the corners of vision with the blue-purple of ultraviolet light. Teeth and shirts and flecks of lint began to glow in the darkness. A low, throbbing music began. We looked up to see, high above us, a skeleton, an alien, a werewolf, and an angel. Their costumes fluorescent in the UV, and they glowed like old dreams high above us on trapezes. They swung back and forth in time with the music, and then as one they let go and tumbled down towards us. We grasped, but before they reached us they bounced on the air and rose up again, like yo-yos, and clambered back on their trapezes. We realized that they were attached to the roof by rubber cords, invisible in the darkness, and they bounced and dove and swam through the air above us, while we clapped and gasped and watched them in happy silence. The fourth room was little more than a corridor. The ceiling was low, and the ringmaster strutted into the audience and picked two people out of the crowd, the stocky woman and the tall black man wearing a sheepskin coat and tan gloves, pulled them up in front of us. He announced that he would be demonstrating his hypnotic powers. He made a couple of passes in the air and rejected the stocky woman. Then he asked the man to step up onto a box. "It's set up," muttered Jane. "He's a plant." A guillotine was wheeled on. The ringmaster cut a watermelon in half to demonstrate how sharp the blade was, and then he made the man put his hand under the guillotine and drop the blade. The gloved hand dropped into the basket, and blood spurted from the open cuff. Miss Finch squeaked. Then the man picked his hand out of the basket and chased the ringmaster around us while the Benny Hill show music played. "Artificial hand," said Jonathan. "I saw it coming," said Jane. Miss Finch blew her nose into a tissue. "I think it's all in very questionable taste," she said. Then they led us to the fifth room, and all the lights went on. There was a makeshift wooden table along the wall, with a young old man selling beer and orange juice and bottles of water, and signs showed the way to the toilets in the room next door. Jane went to get the drinks, and Jonathan went to use the toilets, which left me to make awkward conversation with Miss Finch. "So," I said, "I understand you've not been back in England long." "I've been in Komodo," she told me, "studying the dragons. Do you know why they grew so big? They adapted to prey upon the pygmy elephant." "There were pygmy elephants?" I was interested. This was much more fun than being lectured on sushi flukes. "Oh yes, it's basic island biogeology. Animals on islands will naturally tend towards either gigantism or pygmism. There are equations, you see." As Miss Finch talked, her face became more animated, and I found myself warming to her as she explained why and how some animals grew while others shrank. Jane brought us our drinks. Jonathan came back from the toilet, cheered and bemused by having been asked to sign an autograph while he was pissing. "Tell me," said Jane. "I've been reading a lot of cryptozoological journals for next of the guides to the unexplained I'm doing. As a biogeologist, interjected Miss Finch. "Yes. What do you think the chances are of prehistoric animals being alive today, in secret, unknown to science?" "It's very unlikely," said Miss Finch, as if she were telling us off. There is, at any rate, no lost world off on some island filled with mammoths and smilodons and a Piornis. Sounds a bit rude, said Jonathan. Oh, what? A Piornis, a giant flightless prehistoric bird, said Jane. I knew that, really, he told her. Although, of course, they are not prehistoric, said Miss Finch. The last. Why? The last Eopiornises were killed off by Portuguese sailors on Madagascar about 300 years ago. And there are fairly reliable accounts of a pygmy mammoth being presented at the Russian court in the 16th century, and the band of something which, from the descriptions were almost definitely some kind of saber tooth. The Smilodons were brought in from North Africa by Vespasian to die in the circus. So these things aren't all prehistoric. Often they are barely historic. I wonder what the point of saber teeth would be, I said. You would think they would get in the way. Nonsense, said Miss Finch. Smilodons was a most efficient hunter. Must have been. The saber teeth are repeated a number of times in the fossil record. I wish with all my heart that there were some left today. But there aren't. We know the world too well. It's a big place, said Jane, doubtfully. And then the lights were flickered on and off, and the ghastly, disembodied voice told us to walk into the next room, that the latter half of the show was not for the faint of heart, and that later tonight, for one night only, the Circus of Nights Dreaming would be proud to present the Cabinet of Wishes Fulfilled. We threw away our plastic glasses, and we shuffled into the sixth room. Presenting, announced the ringmaster, the Painmaker! The spotlight swung up to reveal an abnormally thin young man in bathing trunks, hanging from hooks through his nipples. Two of the punk girls helped him down to the ground and handed him his props. He hammered a 6-inch nail into his nose, lifted weights with piercing through his tongue, put several ferrets into his bathing trunks, and, for his final trick, allowed the taller of the punk girls to use his stomach as a dartboard for accurately flung hypodermic needles. Wasn't he on the show years ago? Asked Jane. Yeah, said Jonathan. Really nice guy. He lit a firework held in his teeth. I thought you said there were no animals, said Miss Finch. How do you think those poor ferrets feel about being stuffed into that young man's nether regions? I suppose it depends mostly on whether they are boy ferrets or girl ferrets, said Jonathan cheerfully. The seventh room contained a rock and roll comedy act with some clumsy slapsticks. A nun's breasts were revealed, and the hunchback lost his trousers. The eighth room was dark. We waited in the darkness for something to happen. I wanted to sit down. My legs ached. I was tired and cold, and I'd had enough. Then someone started to shine a light at us. We blinked and squinted and covered our eyes. Tonight, an odd voice said, cracked and dusty. Not the ringmaster, I was sure of that. Tonight, one of you shall get a wish. One of you will gain all that you desire in the Cabinet of Wishes Fulfilled. Who shall it be? Oh, that's a hard one. At a guess, another plant in the audience, I whispered, remembering the one-handed man in the fourth room. Shush, said Jane. Who will it be? You, sir? You, madam. A figure came out of the darkness and shambled towards us. It was hard to see him properly, for he held a portable spotlight. I wondered if he were wearing some kind of ape costume, for his outline seemed inhuman, and he moved as gorillas move. Perhaps it was the man who had played the creature. Who shall it be, eh? We squinted at him, edged out of his way. And then he pounced. Aha! I think we have our volunteer, he said, leaping over the rope barrier that separated the audience from the show area around us. He grabbed Miss Finch by the hand. I really don't think so, said Miss Finch, but she was being dragged away from us, too nervous, too polite, fundamentally too English to make a scene. He pulled her into the darkness, and she was gone to us. Jonathan swore. I don't think she's going to let us forget this in a hurry, he said. The lights went on. The man dressed as a giant fish then proceeded to ride a motorbike around the room several times. Then he stood up on the seat as it went around. Then he sat down and drove the bike up and down the walls of the room, and then he hit a brick and skidded and fell over, and the bike landed on top of him. The hunchback and topless nun ran on and pulled the bike off the man in the fish suit and hauled him away. I just broke my sodding leg, he was saying in a dull, numb voice. It's sodding broken, my sodding leg, as they carried him out. Do you think that was meant to happen? Asked the girl in the crowd near to us. No, said the man beside her. Slightly shaken, Uncle Fester and the vampire woman ushered us forward into the ninth room, where Miss Finch awaited us. It was a huge room, I knew that, even in the thick darkness. Perhaps the dark intensifies the other senses. Perhaps it's simply that we are always processing more information than we imagine. Echoes of our shuffling and coughing came back to us from the walls hundreds of feet away. And then I became convinced with certainty, bouldering up on madness, that there were great beasts in the darkness and that they were watching us hungrily. Slowly, the lights came on and we saw Miss Finch. I wonder to this day where they got the costume. Her black hair was down, the spectacles were gone. The costume, what little there was of it, fitted her perfectly. She held a spear, and she stared at us without emotion. Then the great cat spat into the light next to her. One of them threw its head back and roared. Someone began to wail. I could smell the sharp animal stench of urine. The animals were the size of tigers, but unstriped. They were the color of a sandy beach at evening. Their eyes were topaz, and their breath smelled of fresh meat and of blood. I stared at their jaws. The saber teeth were indeed teeth, not tusks. Huge, overgrown fangs, made for rending, for tearing, for ripping meat from bone. The great cats began to pad around us, circling slowly. We huddled together, closing ranks, each of us remembering in our guts what it was like in the old times, long gone, when we hid in our caves as the night came and the beasts went on the prowl, remembering when we were prey. The Smaledons, if that was what they were, seemed uneasy, wary. Their tails switched whip-like from side to side, impatiently. Miss Finch said nothing. She just stared at her animals. Then the stocky woman raised her umbrella and waved it at one of the great cats. Keep back, you ugly brute, she told it. It growled at her and extended it back like a cat about to spring. The stocky woman went pale, but she kept her umbrella pointed out like a sword. She made no move to run in the torchlit darkness beneath the city. And then it sprang, batting her to the ground with one huge velvet paw. It stood over her triumphantly, and it roared so deeply that I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. The stocky woman seemed to have passed out, which was, I felt, a mercy with luck. With luck, she would not know when the blade-like fangs tore at her old flesh like twin daggers. I looked around us for some way out, but the other tiger was prowling around us, keeping us herded within the rope enclosure like frightened sheep. I could hear Jonathan muttering the same three dirty words over and over and over. We are going to die, aren't we? I heard myself say. I think so, said Jane. Then Miss Finch pushed her way through the rope barrier, and she took the great cat by the scruff of its neck and pulled it back. It resisted, and she twagged it on the nose with the end of her spear. Its tail went down between its legs, and it backed away from the fallen woman, cowed and obedient. There was no blood that I could see, and I hoped that she was only unconscious. In the back of the cellar, room light was slowly coming up. It seemed as if dawn were breaking. I could see a jungle mist wreathing about huge ferns and hostas, and I could hear, as if from great way off, the chirp of crickets and the call of strange birds awaking to greet the new day. And part of me, the writer part of me, the bit that has noted the particular way the light hit the broken glass in the puddle of blood even as I staggered out from a car crash, and has observed in exquisite detail the way that my heart was broken, or did not break, in moments of real, profound personal tragedy. It was that part of me that thought, you could get the effect with a smoke machine, some plants, and a tape track. You'd need a really good lighting guy, of course. Miss Finch scratched her left breast, unselfconsciously. Then she turned her back on us all, and walked toward the dawn and the jungle underneath the world, flanked by two petting saber-toothed tigers. A bird screeched and chattered. Then the dawn light faded back into darkness, and the mist shifted, and the woman and the animals were gone. The stocky woman's son helped her to her feet. She opened her eyes. She looked shocked but unhurt, and then we knew that she was not hurt, for she picked up her umbrella and leaned on it, and glared at us all. Why, then we began to applaud. No one came to get us. We could not see Uncle Fester or the vampire woman anywhere. So, unescorted, we all walked into the 10th room. It was set up for what would obviously have been the grand finale. There were even plastic seats arranged for us to sit and watch the show. We sat down on the seats and we waited, but nobody from the circus came out, and it became apparent to us, all after some time, no one was going to come. People began to shuffle into the next room. I heard the door open, and the noise of traffic and rain. I looked at Jane and Jonathan, and we got up and walked out. In the last room was an unmanned table upon which were laid out souvenirs of the circus. Posters and CDs and badges and an open cash box. Sodium yellow lights spilled in from the streets outside through an open door, and the wind gusted at the unsold posters, flapping the corners up and down impatiently. Should we wait for her? One of us said, and I wish I could say that it was me. But the others shook their heads, and we walked out into the rain, which had by now subsided to a low, gusty drizzle. After a short walk down narrow roads in the rain and the wind, we found our way to the car. I stood on the pavement, waiting for the back door to be unlocked to let me in, and over the rain and the noise of the city, I thought I heard a tiger, somewhere close by, for there was a low roar that made the whole world shake. But perhaps it was only a passage of a train. Oh, there goes the switch. Think that's gonna be it for today. Yes, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Arky, for our resubbing. I really appreciate it. And I'm gonna switch back to this screen and do some shit. Hope you enjoyed today's story time. And I am actually gonna go and pawn you off to Dean, guys. He's playing Ghost of Tsushima, or well, Ghost of Tsushima. He's the boyfriend, he's in the other room, and he is very loud sometimes. I think he's on Be Right Back screen for some reason, but let's rate him. Thank you everyone for coming, I hope you enjoyed it, and I might be streaming tomorrow some more Dragon Age Inquisition. Everyone have a good Sunday night, and see you next time. And I just realized, yet again, I done the thing, but I pressed the button when I say see you next time, so another 10 seconds we are waiting to send you guys off. Yes, I am Big Brain. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.